The latest guest on Gavin Newsom's podcast is our next guest as well. Amie Parnes is co-author of the best-selling new book, Fight: Inside the Wildest Battle for the White House. It's the third straight best-selling book for Parnes, a reporter with The Hill, and Allen, a reporter with NBC News. I love this book. You got to read it. Joining us now from San Francisco is Amie Parnes. Amie, welcome to The Issue Is for the very first time.
Thank you, Alex. It's nice to be here.
So you were a guest on Governor Newsom's podcast. What was that like?
Pretty wild, just in terms of someone else asking me the questions. Someone like him, someone I'm used to interviewing him and other politicians. A little bit strange to have the tables turned and the questions to be posed on me. But I think my co-author and I also tried to ask him a few questions. He was involved in some of the elements we write about in our book, and so we were curious to get his take. And I think it was fascinating to hear him kind of remark about how accurate our reporting was, based on everything he knew.
I mean, your reporting gets into a lot of, dirt and sort of backstabbing in the Democratic Party. What does it say that Newsom would want to highlight that book?
I think he clearly he read it because he was ready to talk about the minutia of our book, and I think he is also curious as a politician and someone with presidential aspirations, probably what we gleaned from this book and what we can do looking ahead. What we lay out for future politicians who want to do this, and I think he comes into this with a curiosity more than anything.
So what'd you tell him on that front?
I think and he agreed with us on this. We essentially said that the Democratic Party needed to be held accountable for what had happened, that Joe Biden needs to maybe come out, or people close to him need to come out and have honest conversations about what was going on behind closed doors at the White House and what led to the Trump presidency. I think he also thinks that the party obviously is in a little bit of a weird spot right now, doesn't know who it is in an identity crisis, and is trying to figure out what to do. I think he, more than most, wants to figure out where the party is and how to gain the trust back of voters that the Democratic Party has lost over time.
Yeah, and you interviewed Governor Newsom for The Hill, and he had some pretty strong takes on where the Democratic Party is. What were your main takeaways from that conversation?
I mean, the big thing is that he feels like the party is still trying to figure out where it is, who it is essentially leaderless, rudderless, and doesn't really have an identity right now. And that was really interesting to me because this is someone obviously who is a top contender in 2028, huge name on the national stage, and also is so perplexed about where the party is right now and what it needs to do to get itself out of the wilderness. And, he has some ideas. He said that the party should be doing a really intensive forensic on what went wrong. He says that the party isn't doing that right now. He hasn't been included in that process, which is also pretty amazing and stunning to me, considering that a lot of people look to him as the future of the party. He has some other ideas on where the party needs to go from here. But, one of the things that he's trying right now, one of these kind of things that I think is, that he's testing is this podcast. And he wants to invite people like Steve Bannon and Charlie Kirk on, and he acknowledged this is sort of kicking the tires on that and trying to do a listening tour and see what other people on the other side are offering.
And he acknowledged in your interview that a lot of people on his side are not liking that.
He said that it's bumpier than he thought it would be, but he also feels the need to not just speak to the chorus and preach to the choir. He wants to kind of reach outside the Democratic universe and reach across the aisle to other people and really listen to what they're saying. I think a lot of what he was telling me yesterday was, that he wants to have these voices as part of the conversation.
So in Fight, you report on the governor's maneuvers when it looked like President Biden might not be the nominee. So what was he doing privately while telling all of us publicly that he had sub-zero interest in ever being president or even thinking about being president? What was he actually doing?
I mean, I think he was also kind of in listening mode and trying to see where people were. I think he was probably curious about people who, like Nancy Pelosi, like Barack Obama, who didn't think that Kamala Harris could win, and they were kind of testing the idea of an open primary. Of course, I think he denies all of this publicly, but I think, he's a politician and you're running until you're not running. And I think that he was curious about where things were going.
Well, the fact that he brought you onto his podcast or promoting your book and telling you how accurate it is maybe leads you to believe that maybe your reporting was true.
I mean, it was, we knew our reporting. We've always stood by our reporting, but to hear him, who is so, vested in the Democratic Party, so much a part of it, talks to donors, talks to all these players, to hear him talk about how airtight it was gratifying.
So one of the main struggles for the Harris campaign was separating herself from President Biden. But according to your book, he really didn't let her, including right before the debate. What did he tell her?
He essentially told her, no daylight, kid. He calls her in the hours before the debate. She's been practicing. She's been in really knee deep in prep sessions, really ready to go on this. And here she is, almost, and she takes a call from him and he essentially tells her, no, kid. He knew that he kind of warns her that his legacy is on the line. So many questions throughout the election why she's not distancing herself from him. And I think this moment really shed some light on what was happening behind the scenes. And what was interesting is the White House kind of had a different arrangement with members of her campaign. They essentially said, do what you need to do. But the principals, Harris and Biden, had their own sort of separate agreement.
You also talk about Nancy Pelosi's push to get Biden off the ticket and how she didn't believe that Harris would win. She wanted there to be an open primary. Now that everything has happened, and all of that is so public about what Nancy Pelosi did, who likes to do things privately, how do you think all this impacts Nancy Pelosi's legacy?
I mean, I think in a way she was right. She had her finger on the pulse. She was concerned first and foremost about the country and what was going on, losing the presidency, but was also really concerned about the House. And she's hearing from members on both sides of, from her caucus, and they don't want to be out there publicly, but they're concerned about losing the House, and they're telling her as much. And so she's really, I mean, to this day, she denies playing a very public role. If you asked her right now if she played a role in this, she would say absolutely not. But she was there taking calls, taking arrows, doing the dirty work when a lot of people were afraid to do that. I mean, when you look across, from Hakeem Jeffries to Joe Biden and everyone else on board, she was the one who was really doing, every little bit of the dirty work. Barack Obama too did not want to get as involved as she did, and so I think at the end she was sort of justified by everything that she did do.
Joe Biden's whole reason for running in 2020 was to try to stop Trumpism. He didn't do that. Trump is more powerful now than he ever was, and so much of this potentially is his fault. How do you think all of this has changed his legacy?
It's definitely changed his legacy. And, the thing that I'm hearing and my co-author is hearing more than anything from people who read our book is, the amount of concern and anger there is right now, and the arrows directed at Joe Biden for not being candid, and his team for not being candid about what was happening behind the scenes, for selfishly digging in when they could very well just have walked away and said, he did what he needed to do. He served a term. He's going to pass the torch on to, new leadership in the party. And, he still to this day believes that he is the only one who could have beaten Donald Trump. He did it once, and he still believes that he could have done it a second time. But I do think that, especially since our book, his legacy is really tarnished. And I think other people will have similar things to say as well.
Yeah, we expect a book coming out soon from Jake Tapper and Alex Thompson, which really looks at some of those, what the White House was doing to try to protect him as well. All right, so your book is really like a great political TV show. It takes you inside the room where it happens. To me, there's been like 3 great political TV shows of our lifetime. There's The West Wing, an idealistic show where the main characters are mostly good in politics, mostly for the right reasons. They do good work. There's House of Cards, a mostly cynical show where the main characters are mostly smart, scheming, corrupt, and a bit soulless. And then there's Veep, a comedy where most of the main characters are bumbling, foolish, and overall incompetent. So which one of these 3 is closest to the truth?
That's a really good question. I've always felt like there's a combination of all of them that's very realistic. I think House of Cards, it's sinister, but I've seen elements of that. I've seen elements of Veep, and of course West Wing. But what's interesting and what we've heard about from readers reading our book is that they think that it does incorporate all of these things, and it falls under the category, Alex, of truth is stranger than fiction. I think like half the stuff that we have in this book reads like fiction, except it happened. Right. And I think all of these shows, these various shows, they kind of find their way into these pages. It's really interesting to see, this is sort of like a Greek tragedy in a lot of ways. And there's a lot of drama and there's a lot of humor in it as well. So it's interesting that you name all of those shows because I thought about all of them as we were writing this book.
That's interesting. So what is your process, though, for reporting to this level? How do you get people to trust you in their most vulnerable moments for you to have exact quotes of what happened?
I mean, it's really hard, and I think if this was our first rodeo, it would be a lot harder. But thankfully, my co-author and I have written 2 other campaign books, and that really prepared us for this one when we had a really short runway to write this and mostly reported after the election. So you can imagine what a tight time crunch we were under. But gratifying that sources really trusted us over the years to tell their stories. And, we consider this to be among our best work because people took the time to talk to us. They want to get this right for history. It's not just looking back, it's also looking ahead. And so we're really, really appreciative of everyone who trusted us to tell this story.
Well, we end with something fun on this show called Personal Issues. This is 30 seconds of your cultural favorites. Just like Gavin Newsom, I'm turning the tables on you. And so this is what comes to mind, quick answers. So here we go. Amie Parnes, what is your favorite political TV show?
Veep.
Favorite movie?
When Harry Met Sally.
Favorite sports team?
The Dolphins, Miami.
Favorite band or musician?
Oh my gosh, so many, but the Beatles.
What's your favorite meal?
Oh my gosh. My mom cooks a killer Iranian dish.
Okay. And who is your role model?
Role model is my son.
Your son, who is with you right now, right?
With me right now.
And why is he your role model?
He teaches me things every day, things that blow my mind. And it's so counterintuitive, but I learn from him every single day of my life.
Does he want to make a cameo?
Yes, he would love to make a cameo. Come over here.
And what's his name?
Remy.
Was he bored with our interview?
Okay. No, he was listening. He can't believe that he's on. He always wanted to be on TV. Here you go.
There he
is. Remy, my role model.
Oh, that is so sweet. Remy, you want to say something nice about your mom?
I like that she's been writing 4 books.
Okay. Very nice.
And 2 of them got #1 New York Times bestseller.
Yeah, including this one. #1 New York Times bestseller, Fight. Congratulations. Enjoy your time in our golden state of California. Amie Parnes and Remy, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Up next, our most frequent analyst announces that he is running for office himself. Stay with us.